It's Kiss 104.1, Atlanta's R&B, The Frank Ski Show. Nina Brown, good morning, crew. We've been talking about this interview all weekend long. People have been trying to get a sit-down with Vernon Jones, former DeKalb CEO, former Georgia state legislator, Democratic Party. He has flipped and now become Republican. Matter of fact, talking about Donald Trump all around the country, upping the Republican Party, actually speaking at Donald Trump rallies. And now we have Vernon Jones. Vernon, how are you?
Doing fine. Could not be better legally. How about that, Frank?
There you go. Listen, can I just say, I've known Vernon Jones since I first got to Atlanta in 1998.
Yes.
You know, he was such a big part of what was going on here when he was the DeKalb CEO. But, you know, Vernon, I got to tell you, man, over the past year or so, whoa, you've been getting into some trouble.
I'm telling you.
Well, you know, Frank, I borrowed a page from John Lewis. I've been getting in some good trouble.
Okay.
Yeah, you know about my record. But, Frank, also you and I, we're men of conviction. We do what we believe is right and helping the black community and all communities. My mother drugged me to church on Sunday, drugged me to church on Monday, drugged me to church on Tuesday. Having a strong father that taught me how to be a young man and a man. That's important. Faith-based, hard work. The government doesn't owe you anything, Frank. And I still bear those principles. And those are the principles that I'm carrying my message across this country with my new organization, WakingUpAmerica.us.
So here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Vernon Jones, who when you were DeKalb CEO, you were a Democrat.
Right.
And over the past year or so, you have been doing things that have had the Democratic Party looking at you cross-eyed. I was on the show with Shelley Winters the other day, and Nina Brown, and Shelley asked me, was he a good Uncle Tom or a bad Uncle Tom? And I said, Shelley, you a good Uncle Tom. And your picture is in the book right next to Vernon Jones.
Yep.
Because Vernon Jones turned on black people.
Yeah.
You know, I said it jokingly, but what happened?
Well, Frank, first of all, I think black people need to be educated on what Uncle Tom truly is. Uncle Tom, look at him. Uncle Tom was an amazing black man that stood up for black people. He made many sacrifices. He saved many of them. He helped many of them get to freedom. Uncle Tom, where, again, lack of knowledge caused you to perish, Uncle Tom did not cut and run on black people. Uncle Tom stood up for black people. That's one of the biggest myths and biggest misinformation out there. I encourage you and Nina right now, and your listeners, pull up what Uncle Tom really means. Next, Democratic Party, I didn't leave them. They left me. I support traditional families. The Democratic Party, like Black Lives Matter, the group, they went at to destroy the nucleus of the black family.
How did you say Black Lives Matter went against black males?
If you look up Black Lives Matter, I encourage all your listeners, but it said in there, it was to push for transgender men. There was nothing in there about standing up for straight men, and families. That's out there. Now, that's what they said. They call themselves Marxists. That's what they said. I didn't say that, Frank. So a lot of people jumped on this Black Lives Matter bandwagon, not knowing what they were really jumping on. Going back to the Democratic Party, Frank, the Democratic Party has been carrying the agenda for liberals. Black people, you know that we're the most conservative people there are. If you look at what the Democratic Party has done, Frank, they want the government to continue to be in charge of us. They want us to claim to be victims. We're not victims, Frank. White liberals got blacks thinking, let me be in charge of you. And guess what? Where was Black Lives Matter in Chicago on the average 60, 70 shootings a weekend, including children? Where is Black Lives Matter saying that? Does it only matter when a white officer is involved with a shooting with a black person? If Black Lives Matter, all Black Lives Matter, Frank. I think everybody feels that way.
We've had that conversation on air, and a lot of people agree with that. But I can't sit here and really say that Donald Trump was for black people, and you endorsed Donald Trump and actually spoke at his rally.
Absolutely, Frank. Think about this, Frank. Tell me one thing, and I want your audience, your listeners to think about this, including Nina, because Nina's smarter than all of us. You know that. Tell me one thing that Joe Biden has done to help the black community in 47 years. Other than mass incarceration of black men and black women. And then here's the NAACP and all these blacks saying this crime bill was disproportionately hurting African Americans. But the Democrats didn't do anything to change that. It was Donald Trump with the First Step Act and getting the Republicans and the Democrats to support it. Many of our friends came home and reunited with their families. They were given a second chance. I believe in redemption. I know you do too, Frank. But how many black men, Frank, died in jail for spending those long prison sentences that was unnecessary? Joe Biden was vice president for 8 years with a black president. Why did they not pass it then? Well, he didn't have a Democratic Senate. Full of mess. For his first 2 years, he had an all-house that was Democrat and had 60 U.S. Democratic senators that would have gotten anything through without a filibuster. So why didn't Democrats and Joe Biden, who was the chief author that locked up our friends, why did he do something then? So Donald Trump did. I went to historical black college, Frank. Many of your listeners went to historical black colleges. Under the Obama administration, the funding was slightly cut. Donald Trump comes in, increases the funding, and then he does what no president has ever done. What did he do? He wrote it into law. Unemployment lower than it's ever been for African Americans. I saw who had the most profound impact on the black community. Clearly, Donald Trump did. Now, you may not like him, may not like his personality, Frank. We can agree with that. But I can tell you what, I didn't judge him on his personality. I judged him on what he did. And for Joe Biden in 2020, Frank, to say black people, if you don't vote for him, you're not black, the arrogance of that privileged white liberal. And then, Frank, just last week, he said that black people are disproportionately affected by COVID because we don't know how to go online and look up information on COVID. So you can't say I'm lying. So I'm speaking facts to power.
But come on, Vernon, you were there the day of the siege on the nation's capital. You actually were on stage with Donald Trump and spoke to the crowd. Tell me what really happened.
Frank, I was there and I spoke to a group of patriots. I spoke to a group of Americans that included black people too. And those people had some problems like anybody can, because the First Amendment allows us freedom of speech. So let me say, if anybody did anything wrong, I'm against that. You broke the law, you need to be punished. I condone the violence. Isn't it ironic that our entire summer, there were cities burning, there were black people killed, there were federal courthouses who were burned down, there were police stations that was destroyed, there were police officers assaulted, and it went on, including here in Atlanta. 26 people died, most of them black. But where was the outrage? All I'm doing is educating my people. I love my people, but I'm not going to be led around by these liberal whites who have an agenda for them and not for the African-American community. If we've been voting 95% for Democrats, Frank, and we look back and we're like, wait a minute, we're where we started. You know what? I'm tired of this.
We are speaking with former DeKalb CEO Vernon Jones, former state of Georgia legislator Vernon Jones, who has now switched from Democrat to Republican, huge Trump supporter. When you were rallying for Donald Trump in Georgia after it was over, did you think there was voter fraud in Georgia?
There were some election irregularities that caused people to be concerned, including me. And I can tell you more directly how it impacted me. When Stacey Abrams lost, although the media said, oh, she's barely lost, that's not true. She was 55,000 votes from just getting into a runoff. Then she goes and have a backroom deal with the Secretary of State that changed the election process that only the Constitution of the state of Georgia gives to members of the Georgia General Assembly, which is, I was one of them. We're only the ones that can change election law.
There's a lot of folks that disagree with you. And do you ever feel like you're on an island by yourself?
Well, for one, Frank, one courageous man in the crowd is the majority. Dr. King wasn't the majority when he started out. Most folks thought, including a lot of black folks, thought he was a troublemaker. I'm not Dr. King, not trying to be Dr. King. There were times when Jesus was a minority. Most people didn't believe Jesus. I'm trying to get black people to see you have a choice. Why are we the only race? Asians don't do it. Hispanics. It's not about me being alone. The Democratic Party, they are horrified by me. They're terrified by me because they know that I'm waking a lot of those black people up who've been on that plantation and that they're starting to think independent. I'm not asking someone necessarily to change parties. You saw the Democratic Party do more this year in the general election to go after the black vote than they have probably in the past 50 years. Why? Because there are people like me and others who are rising up. They know that they always can count on that black vote. when they can't count on that black vote, Frank, what do? They lose. And every time they lose, most of the time they want to blame black people. Well, it was low black turnout. No, it wasn't low black turnout. It was low white turnout. We're the first on the bus and the first kicked off. If there are any blacks out there listening to me right now, you feel like I feel, join me. Come to the Republican Party. It's not perfect, but I can tell you this. You have been getting less of their votes, and they've actually done things to help you, and you've been giving the Democrats all your votes, and they haven't done anything to help you. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to close. You've never seen me on CNN. You only see me one time, if ever, on MSNBC. And if you remember that interview at MSNBC, why am I supporting Donald Trump? And I gave him facts that anybody can check and see. He interrupted me and said, how much is Donald Trump paying you? That was the biggest insult he could have said. But I know a white person in that control room whispered in his ear, because I'm a black man, I can't think independently. So guess what? I must be getting paid by Donald Trump. Never received a dime from Donald Trump. Never asked for a dime for Donald Trump. Never asked for a job for Donald Trump. But you know what? Stacey Abrams got paid $5 million by Bloomberg to walk around with him, to help him when he gets in the election, to walk around with him. But nobody quits. So doesn't that tell you something? And all they're doing is keeping blacks in that plantation to support white liberal Democrats whose agenda has nothing to do with helping the black community.
Ladies and gentlemen, Vernon Jones, thank you so much for this exclusive interview, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. You and Nina. Y'all are great Americans. I appreciate your friendship. But one thing also about it, I appreciate you, Frank, listening to both sides. That means a lot to many of us out there. So thank you, my friend.